It's 8:03, so we're going to call the school committee meeting to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And next we have the Walpole High School Student Report. Claire, please.
Good evening. Beginning with Student Council, this past weekend, our council attended the bocce tournament for the CMAS region. At the tournament, groups of 4 counselors were paired up with buddies in order to participate in a bocce game against other councils. We are very excited in planning our upcoming February and March events. This month, we plan to hold our 2nd annual date auction. At the auction, kids will have the chance to purchase a date for a night with one of our senior volunteers. Next, we plan to hold our 2nd Mr. WHS pageant in March. At the event, senior boys will have the chance to participate in a pageant to showcase their talents in hopes of being crowned the next Mr. WHS. Finally, we plan on holding our annual blood drive at the end of March. At the event, students over 16 will be able to schedule a time to donate blood during school hours. In past years, the event has been a success with a significant amount of students willing to sign up and donate. With sports, girls basketball is 12-3 with their next game against Braintree this Friday. Girls indoor track is 1-4 after a loss to Natick last night. Boys track is also 1-4. Despite a tough season for both the boys and girls teams, they still managed to have qualifiers in the postseason beginning next Wednesday with the BSC Championship meet. Girls hockey goes 6-3-4 after a tough loss to Wellesley last night. Boys hockey also suffered a 2-1 loss to Wellesley last night. Boys wrestling is 17-4 as they face Natick tonight at Walpole High School. Boys basketball wins against Milton this past week, improving their record to 5-8. In other events, the Model UN team is planning to attend their first conference on March 2nd at Northeastern University. Next, the Drama Club is preparing their production of Pippin the Musical. In journalism, seniors Tara Gordon, Lindsay Sullivan, as well as junior Callie Ross recently received a New England Scholastic Press Association Journalism Award for their article on cell phone addiction. The Photography Club is off to a successful start this year. They continue to hold monthly competitions where students can submit any photos they have taken to fit the theme. Dance Company is hard at work in preparing for their spring production. The show consists of 10 dance numbers and it will be presented on April 6th and 7th at the Walpole High School Auditorium. With Speech and Debate Team, they attended the Summitational Tournament 2 weeks ago in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The event was a success, with 4 students breaking into the quarterfinal rounds. Finally, this past week, a group of sophomores to seniors attended the close-up trip in Washington, D.C. The trip was themed Media Week. In the city, students got to visit monuments and museums, as well as see a musical and visit the museum, a museum focused on the media. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was very informative. Thanks, Claire. The next item on the agenda is a school nutrition update.
So you have the school business administrator, Mr. Michael Frischer, will provide an update on projected balances, current balances, and also the committee had asked for a specific report on uncollectibles at this point in time. So we'll break that down for you too. Mr. Frischer.
Thank you for having me. I'm here to update school nutrition department to give you an update on the financials, but also to give you some other information as well. So it's been 5 years since we reorganized this group. We did many changes, such as restructuring the workforce, as well as centralizing our operations at the high school. And it's worked out fantastic. So the update for this year is we began this year with an opening balance of $21,185 that was carryover revenue from last year. Our revenue so far to date is $615,870. Our payroll expenses are $290,583. Our miscellaneous expenses are $322,634, leaving us with a current munis balance of $23,838. So I would, just to summarize that, we're in very good shape. we are, obviously it goes up and down with our payrolls. Our payrolls range between 23 and 24,000 each payroll. But we're able to sustain that with the revenues that we're bringing in. If we continue this trend, which I would anticipate, we should finish the year with a similar balance to what we began this year with. So much different than what the prior structure was, and we were really struggling to make ends meet. So the reorganization has really worked out well, and we're very happy with that. Just to give you some other statistics, our participation rates currently at the elementary school are 50%. At the two middle schools, they're at 40%. That's up from 32% last year, and that doesn't include the a la carte items. So 32% of our kids are buying meals, reimbursable types, full meals, but then there's also a la carte participation as well. At the high school, we're at 38%, and again, there's a la carte on top of that, so that doesn't reflect all of the revenue, just a portion of it. I've included in your packets, as requested earlier in the year, the negative balance, and that's for balances above $15. The reason we did that is because I think there's a fair amount of parents who it runs slightly into the negative and then they settle up their balance. So I didn't want to reflect that in the numbers, but these are more balances that we're concerned about, that we're pursuing, trying to get people to pay their past due balances. So you'll see on that sheet that the past due balance was a little over $10,000, about $10,769, and it details how much at each school. I would say, as compared to last year where we finished, we're pretty happy with where we are. We can always do better, but I don't see that urgency that we experienced at the end of the year last year when I was very concerned. Again, end of the year is usually a little more challenging because you're trying to collect money at the end of a year, and that's always a little more difficult. But I think that this bodes well for how we're moving along this year. I can give you some other updates, just in general on the program itself. In December, we had the first time DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, did what they call a procurement audit. So they decided they're going to audit districts, certain select districts, on the purchasing and how you do your purchasing. Do you bid out your items? Who do you buy from? Do you bid out your items and follow that bid? So they look for all kinds of purchase-related items. They look at your P&Ls, they look at all your financials, and they basically make recommendations on what you can do to improve. We had no substantial findings at all, and I think a lot of that is in part to Maria Hall, who participates on the bid that Tech does for all food procurement that a lot of the districts are using. So that has helped. She's really on the cutting edge, and the gentleman who came out and audited us has known Maria for a long time, and that relationship, I think, helps Maria get answers to questions she had throughout last year and really helped us with our procurement audit. So no significant findings. We are currently in the middle of what they call a 3-year administrative audit. So it's a big year for audits in food service. And they look closely at all aspects of the program, including procurement. So they look at the nutritionals, they look at from nutritionals all the way to payroll accounting, to temperature testing, to how kids come through the line, how the person rings them up. They want to know everything about your operation. They do it every 3 years, and there's generally a fair amount of findings. I don't have that report yet, but from what I'm hearing, it's going very well. I don't think we're going to have any significant concerns, but there's always recommendations to improve on that. So that is going well. I mentioned some things about collecting the negative balances that are in your packet. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to highlight that, but it's some of the strategies that we use to try to get people to settle up their balances. I think what I could highlight too is our catering program is very strong. To date, we have $23,416 in catering this year alone, and some of that's made up of holiday catering, working with Tech, the town of Walpole. We do a lot of catering for the town of Walpole, the Board of Health. A lot of groups are taking advantage of the service, which helps us and helps them provide that nice catering. So that has worked out very well. A little snapshot on our staffing. We currently employ 34 food techs, 7 breakfast aides, because we serve breakfast at each one of our schools. We have 2 drivers who deliver our food from our centralized kitchen. We have 1 operations facilitator, and we have 1 director. So that's kind of an outline of the operation. Chris Turner was a former secretary that worked for the program. She was here 18 years, and she retired this year around Christmas time. So she's moved on, and we've hired a new individual. His name is David Heidkamp. He's our operations facilitator, so we worked with the union to restructure that position and make something what I would consider more practical. David's a graduate of Framingham State. He has a bachelor's degree in food nutrition. He's also a registered dietitian. So if we ever needed to back up Maria, this would be a person who could do that. Also, he's somebody who aspires to become a school nutrition director, and this is the pathway that we've offered for him to help him along with that. So we hope he stays 3-4 years and then moves on, and we'll bring somebody else in. It's kind of a new thought about that position. Couple of events in February 15th. There is a senior citizen dinner. The next one is a series of these throughout the year, and that will have a Valentine theme. And then finally, the 5th annual Iron Chef junior competition, where our kids compete with local chefs and our own chefs or our own cooks within our program. Robin Chappelle and Maria are working on having New England Patriots chefs or current or retired New England Patriots having some involvement. So somehow bringing hopefully our Super Bowl champions into this event would be nice, hopefully. And Sandy Allison and her art students are contributing a lot of the materials that they use to advertise the program. So that's really a nice connection with the high school. And that's pretty much an outline of where school nutrition is at this point in the year.
Thanks, Mike.
Anybody have any questions?
Just a question about the senior citizen night. What time is the dinner, Mike?
I believe they're 4:30. I think they're 4:30 that evening.
Can you guys email us when those are happening?
Sure.
Because it would be kind of a nice thing to attend.
That's a joke here. I'm not
Today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, the next item on the agenda is a vote on the FY19 budget.
So the FY19 budget is in your packet,
Yeah.
in the form of a comprehensive budget as well as a consolidated spreadsheet representing the school leadership request for the budget for next year. The amount allows for level services plus a few enhancements that I'll outline shortly. The amount may be reconsidered throughout the budget season as the expenses or revenues mature. And the administration is recommending a tentative budget this evening in the amount of $44,328,348. That amount represents $304,581 more than the town administrator is recommending, or a gap of $304,000. That can be quickly identified by the issue we're dealing with circuit breaker, which is a reimbursement account for special ed out of district major expenses. Whenever our expenses equal more than 4 times the foundation budget, or about $40,000, the state reimburses, the town an average of 72%. However, this year, because of the federal crunch on finances, the state has been reluctant to release more than $65,000. So we're currently in the negative $170,000 because of that. And next year, I'm projecting $300,000. I'm projecting a 65% budget for next year. Now, that is conservative, but that is in line with the town and their revenue projections, which are generally conservative. We have had positive communication with Beacon Hill, so we think that number will be adjusted not only this year but next year. There seems to be momentum gaining on the part of John Rogers. He now has over 40 signatures of fellow House legislators from the House of Representatives who have signed on a letter to the House Ways and Means Committee. I was in a meeting yesterday with the Superintendent's Association leadership, and we were on the phone with a Speaker of the House's office, and And they say that the circuit breaker is on their radar screen too, so I'm hearing a lot of good noise from Beacon Hill, but I don't think at this point we can budget more than $1 million. So that's a $300,000 decrease, hence the gap. If not for that, I would be in line with the town administrator, not only to provide level services, but to provide some enhancements. So those enhancements include an additional health teacher at the high school. We are currently not in compliance with the law that requires us to provide physical education for students every year of their career. We currently offer physical education through grade 9, and we have a phased-in plan to offer physical ed or health in grades 10, 11, and 12. So that will coincide with a schedule change we're proposing. We have to impact bargain that with the union because it impacts working conditions of teachers. But we feel we've laid the groundwork for positive conversations with the union. And by adding a health teacher, we'll be able to meet the legal requirements, at least in grade 10 and 11, and the Department of Ed said they will work with us and allow us to phase that in over the next couple of years.
Can I just interject there?
Sure.
That was a new law, correct?
That has been a law for a long time, but they've never really pressed the school districts. We have so many kids involved with athletics, and they're practicing an hour or 2, 3 after school, so they've been kind of relaxed about that, but they are not willing to allow us to waive those circumstances in most cases anymore. So there's been a recent push. So the law is an older law, but the Department of Ed is starting to really tighten up on that. The second issue I'd like to address through the regular budget is a chorus and general music teacher at the middle school. We currently have a chorus teacher with a student load of over 300 students, class sizes of 60, and we just don't feel that that is a safe environment or I think there's some potential liability there if we have 60 kids in a class, and I'd like to address that. Plus, I'd like to retain chorus and music teachers, and I don't think we will if we continue with 60 in a class. So one more teacher would be $60,000, and that is in my request of the tentative budget. The third item in the budget, actually 2 more items in the budget, 10% continuous reduction of the full-day kindergarten tuition. We reduced the budget 10% last year. We're adding another 10% into the budget this year, which would total a 20% reduction, or about $130,000. It's only 60 this year versus 70 last year because the number's getting smaller. And then the final thing is we've addressed some athletic transportation needs. We've added $20,000 to the $22,500, which is the second phase of addressing inadequate money for athletic transportations. We've really relied on parents and fundraising and driving to a lot of games. We're trying to address that. So over the past 2 years, we've added $52,500 to the athletic transportation line item in hopes of addressing the majority of the athletic transportation issues. What you will not find in the budget, which we'll try to work with through redirecting internal resources through studying different staffing levels or through retirements, resignations. When someone retires, they retire at $90,000. We can hire a first-year teacher at $50,000 or $60,000, so you can save $40,000, which can then go to bolster and enhance your district. So at this point, the leadership team is recommending a ELL humanities coordinator, K-5, to address ELA, and ELA is the basis for all learning, so we feel that there's a great need to coordinate and to model lessons and to do further research in that area to assist our teachers in their pedagogy. Second elementary request would be math and science instructional coaches to be in the classroom, similar to our digital learning coaches, modeling lessons, visiting other schools that have outstanding test scores or outstanding programs, just spending more time with teachers to help teachers, especially at the elementary level where a teacher is asked to teach science and math and ELA and social studies and everything else under the sun. And it's hard for them to be experts in every single discipline. So if we can provide them with experts in certain disciplines where our scores are somewhat lagging, small percentage points, but they are in some cases, that I think that the music and the science, especially with our new science standards implementation, I think that would be a good investment, but it is not in the actual budget. I focused in the budget on legal issues, liability issues, and full-day K as in athletic transportation. And then I'd like the committee in the next few months to consider another 10% reduction in full-day K, which would be 20% this year, another $60,000. For the middle school, I'm asking for a math academic lab teacher. We have one math academic lab teacher that's shared between two schools, and we believe that the students with more individual instruction could do better, and that we would focus on the 7th grade. Across the state, it's no question that the 7th grade is the worst, where the students perform the worst. It's a more difficult test, more complex, and it's somewhere where I think we need some more work. The next issue is we should consider along the way as a school psychologist, we're seeing a lot more social, emotional issues, mental health issues, not only pre-K through 12, but specifically at the middle school level. We're seeing a heavy caseload for our existing psychologists. We're asking them to do more and more evaluations, and we've burned through 5 psychologists in the last 5 years. So I think, I don't need to be hit on the side of the head with a board to look at trends and to see that we need to provide some assistance with a psychologist at the middle school level, to be shared between both schools. Lastly, at the high school, I'd like to add a half English teacher if we could, to expand offerings there, expand potential AP offerings, and try to reduce some of the class sizes in the upper levels. In the honors courses, we have upwards of 30 kids per class, and I think that we need to try to reduce those numbers to make them in more line with our elementary class sizes, our middle school class sizes. In the school nurse, we seem to be dealing with more and more students with more involved physical conditions, as well as she helps out with the mental health issues too. So we're looking for half a nurse, and that totals $420,000. Those are the needs of the district. So again, I have the health teacher, the chorus teacher, and a 10% reduction, as well as athletic adjustments in the budget. Outside the budget, hoping for further attrition, additional revenue, redirection of resources. I have another $420 that we'd like to work into the budget. I would say of all the positions I've listed that aren't in the budget, the ELA Humanities Coordinator is a priority. The English teacher at the high school and the math the school psychologist is a priority, if we're looking at a priority from each level. And this is consensus with our leadership team. We reviewed this adjusted list this morning. You also have the consolidated spreadsheet in your budget. You can see central services up $86,700. That's the $60,000 for the full day K and the $20,000 for athletic transportation. Instructional technology is up $40,000. We're relying more and more on instructional technology. That's to continue putting technology in the hands of the children and the teachers. Everything else is pretty much level funded. So that, in a nutshell, is the budget. The appropriation we're asking is $44,328,348. That's offset by over $8 million in state aid, so it reduces the burden to the taxpayer. We also offset costs by $1.8 million with reimbursements and tuitions. Our parents pay tuitions for full day K, transportation, athletic. The Boosters Clubs raise about $300,000 a year, which is phenomenal. Preschool pays tuition, extended day. They pay per hour for daycare. Extracurricular, the students pay in the middle school and the high school for extracurricular activities, as well as the elementary kids. And parking, it's the only parking in town that people charge for. We don't charge uptown. We don't have parking meters, but we charge our seniors $200 to help offset costs for busing and education. The other grants, we have the METCO. We've level funded the grants because you just can't predict at this point what the state or the feds will do. Federal government's budget doesn't start until September 1st. The state budget starts at July 1st, but the governor has submitted his budget with about $90,000 increase in state aid, but the expenses have gone up about the same, so it's a zero increase. You can't count on revenue at this point in time, but the House usually increase that budget, House of Representatives usually increase over the governor, and then the Senate usually comes in over the House, and then the House and Senate Joint Ways and Means, they come to a compromise budget, and then we need the governor to sign it in August. So, you know, the House supported circuit breaker last year, but the governor was the one who cut it down to 65%, as well as this Department of Ed. So it is kind of unpredictable, but you can get a good sense. And, you know, relative to other years, I think that we're in pretty good shape with the town administrator supporting 3.2% increase. We've started years at 1.5%, with $1.5 million gap, with no, you know, with a huge hill to climb. So the next steps are, we need the tentative budget voted tonight. We then present that to the Board of Selectmen to put on the warrant. The Finance Committee has to review the budget, and then the town meeting, 150 elected members vote on the budget. So there's about 200 people beyond tonight that review our budget prior to May, the first week of May, when the budget is voted on. So, any questions? I would be happy to answer.
Since there's no questions, does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion to vote a tentative budget of $44,328,348.
Second.
Excellent. Motion by Mrs. Gallivan, second by Mr. Buckley. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600. No, 5, sorry,
Six, I
it
think.
is 6,
It is
yep,
6.
600.
I should mention, we have had 2 public budget hearings, so the school committee has got intensive information. It's not like they just voted tonight the first time they heard the number, and they've had it for about a month. So there's been a lot of scrutiny on the budget. We've made some adjustments, so I appreciate the support of the school committee, and I look forward to hopefully a positive budget season.
Excellent.
Jen?
Yep.
I just wanted to comment on it too,
Of
just for people that are here. This is the fourth night that we've talked about the budget. So we have been doing this for the last month, and it's not unusual at all, and you'll see it in every other town too, that the school committees are advocating for what's needed in our school district. The town administrators are saying what kind of money is available right now, and there's always a gap. So we'll work over the next few months to try to close the gap, both by working, as we will tomorrow, with our legislators to bring in more state aid, to look more closely at our own revenue. As the superintendent explained, it may be because we have some retirements where some money can get saved. So this is surprising for people who are just looking at it for the first time, but it's normal for those of us that have been doing it year over year. So it's not great news, but it's pretty good news.
Yeah.
For this time of the year.
No question.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, then the next item on the agenda is capital budget for FY19.
Mr. Fisher will present the capital needs.
Okay, so I can go down the list. The list is included in your packets. So the first item on our capital list for this year is final phase of the phone replacement at Old Post Road and Bird Middle School. Our recommendation was $50,000. Town administrator is supporting $35,000. That list is out now. Second item is building security upgrades. That item was $30,000. The town administrator is recommending $25,000 for that item. Our third item is one-to-one Chromebook initiative at Walpole High School, Bird Middle School, and Johnson Middle School. Our recommendation was $150,000. The town administrator is recommending $100,000. Our fourth item was a two-way radio replacement, walkie-talkies that we use in each school. We were recommending $35,000. The town administrator is recommending zero funding of that item. Number 5, Walpole High School gym bleacher replacement. Our line item was $85,000. The town administrator is supporting $85,000 for that line item. Number 6 is to install window shades for Elm Street School classroom door windows. It's a security need, and that was $15,000, and the recommendation was 0 for that item. Number 7, the cafeteria table replacement at Old Post Road School.
Thank you.
Our item was, recommendation was $15,000, and the town administrator is recommending $10,000.
I think it's important to add that the town administrator in the building maintenance budget is also carrying $1.9 million for Old Post Road for windows, boilers, and roofs, as well as $450,000 for Elm Street for a roof. So we appreciate his support.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I thought we had some hesitation about the bleacher item.
We do, but
I do.
I didn't feel it was my place to withdraw that, but it's your vote. If you feel that you'd like to defer that to another year. I did check on a couple of issues through Mike and Mr. Imbush, Principal Imbush. The bleachers, it was originally reported that we would lose seats with new bleachers, and the bleacher company has shown Mr. Imbush the design, and we actually will gain seats because they'll be a little steeper. As far as the handicap accessible, I asked him about handicap accessible, and he said that the reason they're considered handicap accessible is because there's a space between the two sections of bleachers, and that's where they put the handicapped individuals, and he doesn't believe that really would meet the true definition of handicap accessible. So those were two issues. There are parts falling off it, but he doesn't feel that structurally they're unsound. So it's really up to the discretion if you would like us to press more on Chromebooks at 150 versus 100, or I think the window shades we ought to be able to do within building maintenance with reserves. Cafeteria table at 10,000, we can work with that and buy tables, phase those tables in.
Well, I was partially concerned about, like,
Yeah.
the first funding, if it's supposed to be 50 for the replacement phones and we have 35,
Right,
how are we
we could push
doing
on
the
that.
I could actually get that done. I did take a really close look at that, and I think if, I may have to cover a little bit of that project through my own resources, through the use of facilities rental account, but with the 35, we could cover that, so that wouldn't be taking away from our resources.
So I'm just doing a rough calculation here. If you take items 1 through 4 and the amount that we've been given versus the amount we asked for,
Yeah.
it looks like there's an $85,000 difference. I prefer to use the $85,000 towards the top 4 items rather than the bleachers.
Okay. So we'll adjust this and we were very clear with the town administrator that there was a deadline we had to meet, that we had to submit this to the town administrator. In fact, it was his idea for the bleachers. I mean, that didn't come from you, did it,
No, that
Mike?
did come from us.
Oh, it did?
Initially,
I
a year or so,
apologize.
from the athletic director.
Yeah.
But, right,
Okay, so it came from us. So it's tentative, and really, it's up to you folks, what you'd like us to press and what you'd like us to request. And we'll be happy to make adjustments based on your vote. That's the democratic
Nancy?
process.
Jen, I also don't want to support the bleachers. I think it's really unclear what this building's going to be used for.
Yeah.
And I think that it could be a waste of money at this point. I also just listened to Mike Frisha say that he thinks he can do the phone system for 35. So I think if we can do it for 35, we should keep it at 35, which would free up 15,000. And I remember I was looking for my notes, and I don't see them, but I remember we were talking about some things in technology that are in the operating budget
Yes.
that we could ask to be put into the capital budget.
Yeah.
Does anybody
Yeah.
have enough information to at least consider that?
And there's 30,000 in FM systems for children who are hard of hearing in our budget. There's 10,000 in it for switches, which work all the internet and switch all the data around and I can't explain it more than that. It's basically technologically
No,
more
that's good
advanced than my
enough.
brain.
Yep,
But, so there's 40 right there. When you look at the Chromebook carts in each of the budgets, it adds up to about 60, so there's 100. So I calculated 100,000 when I combed through the budget.
I'd be interested in getting something beyond the first 4 items.
Okay.
And I would consider taking the 15,000 that Mike is saying isn't really needed for the phones,
Yep.
and trying to get the FM systems or the switches,
Okay.
whichever you think we have a better shot at.
Yep. I did ask for FM systems last year, and they weren't funded, so maybe the second time around they will.
That's just it, yeah.
Yeah.
That will help us with our budget gap, too,
No, that's
Right,
exactly what I'm
exactly.
trying to do.
or gain a position we need.
Mhm.
just-
So, tell me again about the window shades at Elm Street. You think you can get that handled?
Yes.
Okay. And the replacement cafeteria tables.
I think that's an important one. It may sound petty, but I think it's important. We've neglected them for as long as they were initially installed. And sometimes they come down when they're trying to fold them up, and they don't operate as they should.
Okay.
And although it seems simple and minor, it really isn't. We need to start upgrading them. Think about, there's probably 15 tables at least in most of our buildings. In this building, probably has 20 plus.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of expense, or over $1,000 a table. So it would be a nice start towards replacing those and upgrading them.
I feel really strongly that technology and the Chromebook initiative and getting our town where we need to be in terms of technology is more of a priority for me, just
Okay.
based upon all the feedback I get from other parents than
Okay.
bleachers, which quite frankly, no one has mentioned.
Yep. Number 4, the two-way radio replacement. We did have a conversation with Mr. Johnson. He believes he might be able to do something with the police and fire projects and envelop the school in that public safety, because that's where the request is coming from. It's coming from the police department. They're concerned that our two-way radios won't get through the noise, the electronic and the noise if there is an emergency at one of the buildings, because everyone will be on cell phones, kids will be trying to contact parents and vice versa. The phone lines will be jammed, and they need that secondary communication if people are locked down in certain areas of the building. So that's really part of the
And
safety program.
just to add to that, we did meet with the police department and a representative principal from each level, and we were able to determine after a couple of meetings that the current radios we're using are adequate.
Okay.
It would be good to update those, because they're probably 5-6 years old at least at this point, but that's something we can do down the road, and I don't feel that that's a safety concern at all. So I don't feel like Mr. Johnson not supporting that is a major safety issue. It's not.
Right, so if we had 35,000 for number 1, the finish the phone replacement phasing. Number 2, the building security is, can you live with 25? We'd have to probably use the facilities rental to finish that project of about 5,000. Chromebooks will go for 150. Two-way radios will eliminate. High school
Do you feel
gym.
comfortable totally eliminating the two-way radios? Or should,
Yes.
I guess, because the other possibility is there will be money in the fall.
Yeah,
So keep that in mind also.
all right.
Like, I'm not saying to waste it, but if we're just trying to come up with a certain total, I wouldn't be afraid to have something on our list that we don't get right away, but it's just clear that we need. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to totally replace that until we know whether or not we can get it through the police and fire station.
I mean, Mr. Johnson did support, he would
Yeah.
provide the resources we need to buy these in the future, but I don't, to your point, I don't think there's any harm in leaving it on the
No.
list.
Would you be comfortable if we put it in year 2? Move it to year 2? And if it doesn't happen year 1, we could go for year 2 or in the fall?
Well,
Or do you want to leave it on the list as
If
a?
we want, to be setting ourselves up for the potential of this fall, I think year 2 is too late.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's a safety issue too. I mean, that's my concern, that some of these
Yeah.
are safety issues, so. But if you're saying police and fire might,
What we have right now is compatible with what they're using, but I think it would be a good decision down the road to upgrade those radios and get new radios. A lot of these radios are 5, 6 years old. So it's not an immediate safety concern, but down the road, we will need to do something there.
but could it come out of their budget, or did I misunderstand that?
From what Jim was saying, I think it would come out of their budget. He was trying to incorporate it with the new police station and the
Mhm.
funding for that. If he does it in a timely manner, he can get funding incorporated with the building to pay for these.
Can I make a suggestion? People can adapt it if they want, but how about if we vote tonight for $35,000 for the phone replacements, $25,000 for the building security upgrades, $35,000 for the two-way radios, $150,000 for the Chromebooks, nothing for the bleachers, nothing for the window shades at Elm Street, and $35,000 for FM capabilities, FM.
Any 30,
Why do you need 30?
because that's the amount identified by the Director of Student Services, Director of Special
Oh,
Ed.
you can't, okay, we're asking for 30.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about the cafeteria tables, though?
I was gonna put the cafeteria tables on there too.
15.
15.
Okay.
What does that add up to? Probably close to the 380.
To 140? 35, 25, 70. Oh,
It's
plus
290.
150.
150.
290. 290, is that what you get?
Yeah? I think that's very
Nice, got the
reasonable.
calculator.
Yeah, I'm gonna just double check this.
70, 220.
So number one is 35, you
55.
said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
35,
Two is
25.
25,
70.
150,
It's 220.
Oh, did you say
55.
150?
leaving that off,
70.
90.
15, and then 30.
290 as well.
Do we keep 150
Should we
for
put
the
the 10?
Chromebooks?
$10,000 worth of switches in there too, and ask,
For 300?
yeah, because the
Yeah.
total that had been on here was 380, so we're
Yeah,
under that total.
yeah. The reason I didn't put that on there was because they approved 450 last year,
Right.
and I just didn't want to go back to the well too often. But I think it's a need identified beyond what we asked for last year.
You could go 5 more on the FM systems, and we could, you'd transfer the money if we needed to.
You know, they won't let you transfer.
Yeah,
They won't let you transfer. Plus, I only have identified 30,000.
all right.
I want to go in with a solid request. All right, we'll put the switches on, it'll be a $300,000 request. Fair enough?
No, we'll take it out of the operational budget.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, once the vote occurs.
That was
Okay.
just a suggestion. I don't know, if people want to change it.
So can you
Sounds
walk
like a
through the
motion.
numbers again? It was 35 for number one, right?
Yeah.
25, 150,
Mhm.
0 for 4, 0 for 5,
Mhm.
0 for 6,
Mhm.
15 for 7. Is that right? Or we?
Yep.
And then 30 for the FM.
Yep.
And what was the last
I mean,
amount?
the
10 switches.
Okay.
And
10 for the
building
switches.
security too. I don't know if you got that in, that was 25.
Which one?
Building
2.
security, number 2.
I have 25 there, okay. And that equals the 300.
So we'll need a motion?
Yeah. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to request $300,000 worth of capital budget equipment for the school department. $35,000 for the system-wide phone replacement, $25,000 for building security upgrades, $35,000 for the replacement of two-way radios, $150,000 for one-to-one Chromebooks, $30,000 for what do we call them, FM?
systems.
FM systems, for hearing impaired children.
Mhm.
Yep.
10,000 for the switches needed to upgrade technology, and 15,000 for replacements of cafeteria tables.
Second.
Okay. I have a question. Can I ask while the motion?
Yeah.
Number 4 is supposed to be 35?
Number 4 is the Chromebooks, as I see it.
That's number 3.
Two-way radios.
Yeah,
Two-way
two-way
radios.
The numbers aren't the same from the.
It's different in
Yeah.
this
On the
list
two
and
pieces of
this
paper.
list.
I just want to make
Oh.
sure that we've
Yeah.
zeroed that out, because I thought you said 35 on that.
I'm going from this chart here.
Okay.
I had,
Where do you see the difference?
okay,
This one right
3
here.
and
This
4
one,
are
yeah. 3 and 4
reversed
are
in here.
switched.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is, what is number, so the two-way radio replacement, what's the amount on that?
35,000.
Yeah, I would use this front sheet.
It's the 35, okay. And that equals the 300,
Yep.
okay. Excellent. So we have a motion by Mrs. Gallivan, a second by Mr. Breen. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, in favor, 600. Okay. The next item on the agenda for old business is a second reading of the 2018-2019 school year calendar.
In your packet is the school committee school year calendar. There's an overview. This is for 2018-2019. The school, we're proposing the teachers return to school on Monday, August 27th. Students in grade 1 through 12 will return on Wednesday, August 29th. Pre-K and kindergarten students return on Tuesday after the holiday weekend, September 4th. Last day of school for grades 1 through 11 without snow and emergency days would be Wednesday, June 12th. Changes from the last iteration. I did have conversations with the Leadership Council, and we are requesting that we have a early release day in April. It's the only month we hadn't requested an early release for professional development, so that I have put that on April 12th. That's the only change from the last request.
Okay. Any discussion? Nancy?
Yeah, just, I'm wondering about the early release days right before vacations. Do you have any problem with teacher attendance?
No, we've discussed, we discussed about engagement. Will they be engaged, fully
Yeah.
present during class time? We think they're professional enough, and if you look at all the other Fridays on the calendar, it's really tough to shoehorn another PD day in and still have a gap of at least 4 or 5 weeks between each one.
Yeah, no, I'm not,
Yeah, I feel good about it.
okay, just so long as it's worthwhile.
Yep.
And we had also talked a little bit about the fact that when you do parent conferences, that there are early release days, I believe it's twice now during the year for parent conferences, in the afternoon, is that correct?
The elementary level, yeah.
Okay, so the question is, I think we should find out really how necessary they are, because that could be your extra professional development day. If in fact maybe you do no afternoon conferences in the spring, but you do afternoon conferences in the fall, or vice versa. We were getting some mixed
Yeah.
feedback about how valuable those are.
Well, it's just difficult for some parents to make the evenings. The parents have shared with us that they like the afternoon, and it's tough to get all the parents in and have conversations with teachers in that short window of time at night. And you only have so many nights within the collective bargaining agreement where the professionals are available.
So you feel like you've surveyed enough to be solid on that?
We can always survey more, but at this point in time, I'm comfortable
Okay.
with the
All right.
request. We have seven release days for PD. There are some towns that have one a week. That's extreme, like Westwood. But I think 7 is reasonable.
Okay.
Okay.
Westwood has a PD day a week?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every
I don't know,
Wednesday.
4
There are other
They
towns
said
that do the same.
Maybe like half day on Wednesdays or something.
jeepers.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no further comments, I need a motion.
Motion to approve the 2018-2019 school year calendar.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Muccini, second by Mrs. Sarek. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the second reading of the 2018-2019 school committee meeting calendar.
So the school committee calendar is similar, except for January 31st. I've added a meeting because per town charter, we need a budget approved before February 1st. So we need a meeting January 31st after the two public budget hearings on the 15th and the 22nd to vote a tentative budget similar to what we're doing tonight. So I added a meeting.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Mr. Buckley?
I don't know if we were being serious or not, but did we have a discussion about eliminating Valentine's Day? I mean, I don't have anything going on, I'm sure.
Certainly
but-
you have big plans, Bill. Let's keep coming up.
We're married 32
It's a long
years.
time away.
I'm just saying.
We
I thought
definitely
that
had a
was
discussion
that was a
about
point of discussion.
moving that till earlier in the week. We definitely did, but
It's tough to shoehorn more dates in for the school
No.
calendar the way it is.
we were wondering like moving that to Wednesday or so, if that would be possible.
Oh, during that week?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could if we could
Just
find a room. We
adjusting
can
it.
always have it here.
I like that better.
So you want to tentatively plan on February 13th,
12th or 13th, either one, whatever.
Tuesday, the 12th?
I don't know. I don't want to play.
For the record, I
Well,
don't
the
care. I
14th
just
is
we should talk about this.
School
As
calendar.
much as I love you guys, I would prefer not to
Neither.
spend
You'd be at home.
Valentine's Day with you.
Yeah, that's
The 13th is fine. I don't have a preference.
We'll have to check for conflicts, but we can always adjust that to the 12th or the 11th if we have to.
She brought it up. I didn't.
We did have discussion.
Okay. Well,
But still.
you better plug this in so no one else schedules a concert or.
Okay. So, is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, so can we have a vote then?
Through you, Madam Chair, make a motion to approve the 2018-2019 school committee calendar as amended.
Second.
Excellent. Motion by Mr. Buckley, second by Mrs. Sarek. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600. Okay, next item on the agenda, subcommittee reports. We have legislative breakfast. Nancy?
Yeah, I have some information. I made 12 copies, so I think we should probably share, so that the audience can get some. I'll share with you, Mark, if you don't mind. But tomorrow morning, we're having a meeting here at the high school with all 5 of our state legislators. One of the things that's important is, our senator is brand new. He just got elected in October. So, it's important to sort of, establish the right communication, methods going forward. And we always had a really good relationship with our state legislators. So this is just a continuation. What's great about it is tomorrow morning we're going to have members of the school committee, members of the Board of Selectmen, members of the Finance Committee, some students, our teacher union president, and I'm probably forgetting a couple of other people that are going to be there. But a strong representative group from Walpole. What I've just made some notes about things that are sort of priorities that we want to talk about tomorrow morning, and I wanted to get feedback from any of you that want to add to this. But our first major priority is that we want to get circuit breaker funded this year to help us with the financial crunch that we're in, but also to help us with next year's budget. And that's sort of the top short-term priority. The long-term priority, though, has to do with the fact that cities and towns are covering the cost of education without the help that was, in my opinion, intended from the state. And the graphs that are here, on the first page, it's a graph about Walpole. On the back of that, it's a graph of the state. And if you look at it, they look pretty similar to each other. And what it's showing is the shaded blue bars represent what's called the foundation budget. And that was what was developed in 1993 when education reform came into play. And at that point, it was an accurate representation of what it cost to educate students in Massachusetts. And for most of the 90s, both in Walpole and the state, the actual cost of educating, which is the solid blue line that is heading northward most quickly, the two things basically lined up with each other. But what has happened since then is economies have gone up and down, other priorities have come into play, and there's a tremendous gap between what cities and towns are actually spending, along with the state. The state is paying, they're just not paying at the rate that gets the job done. And that's, I think, one of the big priorities that we need to talk to our legislators about. In 1993, the legislators at that time made a real commitment to education, and it has paid off tremendously. Overall, Massachusetts tends to appear to be the #1 state in education, in public education in the country, and we compare very well internationally as well. What has happened lately is the cost is being borne, in my opinion, disproportionately by the local taxpayer. And again, it's a combination of things. Some of our legislators are veterans, but we have a brand new senator. So, we're just trying to sort of set the stage for, in recent years, there's been a lot of talk up on Beacon Hill that education and transportation need to be the top two priorities. Keeping that in mind, we also know that healthcare costs are consuming northward of 50% of the state budget. And they have their own set of challenges that they have to deal with. But there's been some work called the Foundation Budget Review Commission suggesting that the state needs to share more of the burden of education. And there's talk about wanting to move the recommendations forward. I want to talk to our legislators about specifically what's in it for our town if we work together with them to move the Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations forward. And part of the reason that I'm skeptical is because if you look at pages 3 and 4, this represents just the governor's proposal. So the only proposal that's out so far right now at the state level is the governor's proposal. In April, the House proposal will come out. In May, the Senate's proposal will come out. But the governor's proposal, the way the money's being distributed, Walpole comes out very poorly. If you look at the very bottom line of the page that says local aid estimates, it looks like we go up about $80,000 worth of, I believe it's $89,000, in terms of revenue coming into the town projected for next year. Unfortunately, when you look at the next page, our assessments are going up by $88,000. So what that means is a net big ol' $1,000 for the town of Walpole next year. And this is why it's a good time to be talking to our legislators, because it's important to bring stuff like this to their attention. On the last of the pages, what I did was I looked at information from the Department of Revenue and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, trying to paint a picture for the number of people that will be in the room tomorrow morning. I think that I think it might make sense for me to reverse the columns completely, because the first one I want to talk about is the last column, the actual net school spending. That goes back to the graph that I was showing you at the beginning. It shows that every town in this area is spending above foundation. Some of them significantly more than we are. We are the 11th out of 17 in terms of high to low percentage above net school spending. But the expectation in Walpole is that we compete with these towns academically. And it's a challenge that I think it just informs people of the fact that we're trying to do as much as we can with less revenue, but we also have the challenge of trying to remain competitive. The second column in from the right-hand side just tells you the total amount spent per town per student, and we're number 13 out of 17 in that list. The middle column is the average single-family tax bill among these towns, and Walpole is 8th in this list. And if you think about it, it has a lot to do with the fact that we don't get as much commercial revenue as a number of these other towns do. But it's not, to whine, it's just to inform that what some of our challenges are. The second column in that says preliminary local aid increase after assessment changes based on the governor's proposal, that's the one that I did myself. All the rest of this came directly from the DESE or the DOR. I did the subtractions between the assessments and the revenue, and I'm pretty sure it's accurate, but I just felt like I should mention the fact that it may not be. But the ranges are unbelievable, and I would like some help understanding why. I understand that Framingham has tremendous needs, but when we're getting $1,000 and they're getting $4 million, it really has, somebody's got to be looking at it. And there are a few other towns that in the end will lose revenue. So it's pretty much just setting the stage for tomorrow's conversation. And I guess the last thing that I would add is in November on the ballot, there's very likely going to be a ballot question about taxing people whose income exceeds $1 million, taxing that extra portion. And if I knew that it was going to benefit each town, I would look at it differently. I would want to know how they're going to distribute the money. So I feel like that's something that we should talk to them about tomorrow. And then I think we just need to circle back to, if you take nothing away from this at all, our number one priority is circuit breaker. But in case people can't be there tomorrow, I just wanted to, put it out there tonight so that you can add any things onto the list that should be in there.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. And aside from the big gap between Framingham and the 4 million towns that we tend to think of have more revenue than we do are wealthier. I mean, Sharon's getting $86,000 and we're getting $1,000. Westwood's getting $35,000. So Thank you for pointing that out in this column. Or Needham is getting $436,000, and we're getting 1,000.
It really, really is tricky. Like, it shows you
That's why.
how hard it is to get something done in terms of making a change, because there are always going to be winners and losers. And in order to make a change, some legislators have to come together and make a change that benefits enough people. So you can look at it from this year to next and say, that doesn't seem fair, but you do have to go backwards a bit too. Like, Walpole right now, well, the column that says Chapter 70, based on the governor's proposal, is saying that we're getting $21.54 per student, whereas Needham is getting $1,700 per student, even after this change. So they would make the argument, well, you're starting at a higher point than we are. So it's incredibly complicated to make the right argument. But
Medfield, on the other hand, Medfield, that's getting $503,000, is going to be getting,
right, and
600 more per
Franklin is the
student.
one that I
Yeah,
always
don't
look at.
understand that at all.
Why
They're almost
they're
at
already at
5,000.
5,000 a kid,
Yeah.
and we're at 2,000. That doesn't make sense to me.
Or not even, yeah.
But I also do appreciate the fact that in order to pass something, you need 50% plus one vote, and it's not an easy solution. So I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but it's a good time to be talking to them, though.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the parent forum, February 28th at Walpole High School. Nancy, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, well, as we worked this summer, we talked with a lot of parents at the high school about changing a policy related to chemical health. So the use of drugs and alcohol among our high school students. And what we decided we wanted to do is we wanted to improve our policy, but also improve our communication with parents and make sure that we share relevant information with them. So on Wednesday night, February 28th, we're hosting a parent forum. It's going to be here at the high school auditorium, and Chief Carmichael is going to speak about some of the concerns that he has seen because of experiences that he's had with Walpole young adults. But we're also having a speaker who is, he's a retired educator whose daughter unfortunately was killed during dating violence. And he talks an awful lot about how to talk to kids when they're young about the fact that breaking up is a normal part of an adolescent experience, and there are things that you should do, there are things that you shouldn't do when you're in the middle of a difficult situation like that. But he has an incredible way of really trying to not judge people, but to help students and parents learn from his own family experience. And we're really hopeful that parents of middle schoolers and high schoolers will all feel like it's an important night to attend. It's open to everybody in the community, including students, but we're focusing it mainly on parents, and partially because the counseling staff here at the high school has done something similar around dating violence with the current sophomore and junior class. So some people have gotten very interested in that topic, and some of the students are getting trained to be peer counselors around issues of relationships and proper communication and warning signs and things to be on the lookout for. So I think we'll feel, hopefully, that we're just a better informed community after this event. So again, it's Wednesday night, February 28th at 7 p.m. here in the auditorium.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you very much for organizing that.
Sure.
Sounds like it'll be a very informative night. The next item on the agenda is a special education subcommittee meeting. I can
Go ahead.
add something.
The reason I asked for the special ed subcommittee was because we're running a deficit. We have a $170,000 deficit based on our circuit breaker reimbursement reduction by the governor. We also have several students who have moved in and have been over $300,000 over budget. So we're at about a $400,000 deficit right now. We'll try to manage through that before town meeting, but we'll have to have reconciliation at town meeting. We've had meetings with the town administrator, and we're looking at avenues to pursue. There is a reserve account that we may have to ask to access. And we'll have to continue to look within our budget to see if we can help mitigate that within the district. But 400 is a lofty amount to overcome. Okay.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. Do we have citizens here who would like to make comment? Okay, I just want to briefly go over some guidelines. I don't know if you guys have the sheet, but in terms of timing, everybody gets 3 minutes, so we're really glad you came, and we'd love to hear from you.
3 minutes. I just sat
Talk
there
fast.
for 3 minutes. Hello, my name's Tom Deedle. First of all, I'd like to say that you guys do a fantastic job after sitting through this. I have a new appreciation for what you guys do, so get that out of the way. And just have something that I want to discuss. And I wrote it down so that I wouldn't lose my train of thought, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. But I'm here tonight to voice my frustration with the impact of the current transportation policy on both me and my kids. I'm asking the school committee to deliberate on and make a change to the transportation policy. I've lived in Walpole and have paid property taxes here for over 20 years. Last year, my ex-wife and I divorced. We both still live in Walpole. We both own separate homes. We both continue to pay property taxes in Walpole. We have shared custody arrangement, meaning the kids are with me half the time, and the kids are with her half the time. Okay, I pay half of the bus fee. I recently bought a new home in my kids' same school district so that my kids could continue going to the same schools. When I called the bus department and wanted to have them picked up, they said, no, the kids can't be picked up at 2 different locations. They have to be picked up at one place or the other. Okay, I did notice that they could be picked up and dropped off at different locations, but that would require my kids to be dropped off at a different house, not mine. And I don't believe that is safe, okay? The policy as presently constituted does not work for me as a taxpayer. It's unacceptable. After very little research, I have already found 2 districts that make allowances for the situation that I have described above. Plymouth by written policy, Seacon by exception to the written policy. In Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court has already struck down down policies that refuse to acknowledge that kids can have 2 official permanent addresses. I would ask the school committee to require the school district and the bus company to adopt a more progressive policy and acknowledge that my kids have 2 legal addresses in the town of Walpole. All right, now, my divorce situation is different. We have what's called joint legal and joint fiscal custody, okay? Well, I'm not talking about, because I know why they changed it years ago, because I have kids that are in the high school. I've been here for a long time. I know we used to say, okay, Billy's gonna go to Jimmy's house on Tuesday, so he's gonna take bus 7 home, okay? They did away with it because it was too hard to take care of. It was too hard to keep track of. So I get it. okay? But all I'm asking is that my kids can get on the bus at their house when they're with me, and I want them to get off the bus at the house when they're with me. I'm not asking this for part of daycare or anything like this. Now, when you have joint physical and joint legal custody, that means your kids have two legal addresses, okay? It's not, when you get divorced, there's different languages that go in there. And when you have joint physical and joint legal, it's two legal addresses. Not a lot of people have that. I'm not talking about accommodating the whole town here. In fact, I think there'd only be a handful in this town that have that type of, so I'm asking that you guys reconsider and
Thank you for bringing that
appreciate it.
to our attention. As common at school committee meetings, we don't decide anything here. We, take comments, and then we get back to you at a later date and deliberate. So I just wanted to.
I'll be back the next meeting, and I'll be hoping that you guys will have some type of answer for me. But I would much rather take care of this rather than litigate this in a court room, which I think is ridiculous. And, I mean, I've had them tell me it's a safety issue. Well, next year, my son's gonna be walking home from the middle school. He's gonna walk down Route 27, across Main Street, across Common Street, and then down Lewis Ave. I mean, that's safety? I don't believe that is safety. I think the safest thing is for my son to get on the bus and get off at his house. I don't see why it would be any different.
Well, thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts, and we will be in touch.
I
Okay.
really do appreciate what you guys do.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
We're glad you came to us.
Do we
We'd
have
rather hear it.
contact information?
I'm sure. Okay.
Policy Subcommittee.
Yeah. Okay.
I see we have some other citizens. I'm assuming you guys would like to make comments too?
Pete, does she need a microphone?
I know we have no microphone.
You can hear.
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Allie Hamilton. I just wanted to comment on the kindergarten tuition, the reduction of the 10% within the budget. I would really like to see the school committee aggressively continue to reduce the tuition for full-day kindergarten. There's been a number of towns recently, Mansfield, Foxborough, Ashland, who reduced their $4,000 kindergarten tuition in 1 year. I feel it's important that we address that all students have access to academics prior to addressing maybe some other needs. I know there's a long list of needs, there's a limited amount of funds, and we have to balance what is important. But currently, right now, there's a small population of students who do not have access. And I really would like to see Walpole move forward for K through 12 universal access to education. So I know additional funding's on the short list, but I think if we continue to approach the FDK tuition as 10% a year, this will be a long time before we see that parents do not have to pay for academics in town.
Thank you for your comments. Other citizens?
It's a record.
Yeah,
I wanted to set a record tonight. Andrew Flowers, just want to echo exactly what Allie said. Just, first of all, thank you. First of all, I want to echo what, is it Tom?
Yes.
Thank you for all the work you do. I know this budget process is exhausting and you want to pull your hair out, but thank you for all the work you do. I appreciate your aggressiveness in asking for a 10% reduction, maybe a 20% reduction in FDK, but like Allie said, just keep on fighting, keep on arguing for this further. The one comment I'll add to this is that in context, when you think about who the people are who are in your ear, or who are in the leadership team's ear, principals in the school system, they're teachers, the teachers union, their parents, right? And so their staff and the parents of their students are asking them for more resources. And I get that you have to make these trade-offs between, a new health teacher and ELA, and that's your decision, and I trust you, you're going to do a great job on that. But with full-day kindergarten, those parents aren't engaged often in the school system. And so that's, I think, something that Allie and I really are passionate about is just having a voice for them and saying, hey, this really matters. We're talking about 5-year-olds education, and I'm just so excited that you're all on board with continuing to reduce the FDK tuition, and you've done a great job with it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Jean, would you like to speak? You're a citizen.
I know, I'm a citizen of Walpole, but I'm an employee. I concur with all that they've said, and I think it's important for us to consider every student's needs.
I will agree, and this past year, the numbers are going down in terms of the number of students who aren't in full-day kindergarten, and that disparity bothers me, and, I really feel strongly about this, and it will be something that we continue to push for, and, for the parents who aren't there in our ears. I totally appreciate what you're saying, but, just know that we are, and we have taken it seriously. We met last year and spent a lot of time on the issue, and it is a big priority for the school committee. Excellent. And thank you for your time, everybody. Next up, we have the approval of warrants, donations, and minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the payroll warrants for January 11th, warrant number SA28A, and for January 25th, SA30A, for the amounts listed in your packet.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Sarek, second by Mr. Buckley. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable warrants from January 18th, 218029, from the 25th of January, warrant 218030, and from February 1st, warrants 218031 for the amounts listed in your packet.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Sarek, second by Mr. Buckley. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600. Would you like to do the donations, or? Great.
Make a motion to approve the following donations: to the Fisher School, Boyden School, Johnson Middle School, Old Post Road School, and Elm Street School from Bay State Textiles Recycling, total of $363. To the Fisher School from the Christine Turner DBA Think Again Marketing PBIS program, $36. To the Walpole High School, the Stephen Fokker and Elizabeth Fokker in memory of the Michael Fokker Memorial Fund, $250. To the Boyden School, Life Touch National School Studios Photography Commission, $1,745. To Bird Middle School, Johnson Middle School, Achieve 3000 one-on-one literacy program, $2,652. And then system-wide, from the Middlesex Savings Bank, digital learning in the classroom, 30 laptops and 1 cart per school in the amount of $50,000. And to the Fisher School, from Constance M. Garrity and Thomas J. Garrity, a document camera in the amount of $400. Very generous gifts as always.
Excellent.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mrs. Muccini, second by Mrs. Sear. I'm going to give it to you. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600. And next we have minutes. Someone want to take
I can
these?
do that.
Excellent.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the October 12th executive session meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Mrs. Muccini. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600.
Motion to approve the January 11th curriculum subcommittee meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Mrs. Muccini. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600.
Motion to approve the January 11th budget subcommittee meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Ms. Muccini. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 501.
Motion to approve the January 11th regular school committee meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Ms. Muccini. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600.
Motion to approve the January 16th public budget hearing meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Ms. Muccini. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 501.
Motion to approve the January 18th public budget hearing meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Mrs. Muccini. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600. Now, we need a motion for executive session.
There is a need for executive session.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to go into executive session.
For the purpose of?
for the purpose of discussing.
For the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Breen, second by Mrs. Muccini. All those, I think I have to poll the committee.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Okay, we're going into executive session. We won't be coming out into regular session. Thank you.
If anybody has these papers that you can return to me, I'll give them out tomorrow again.
Do you give them the
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
I wanted to,
Thanks, Ally. Or just bring it tomorrow if you. All right, sounds good.
Sorry, I wrote on my name.